All right, moving on to the Dallas Cowboys, and we've got three stars as their top three players, and other stars that get cut shows the depth here. We've got Micah Parsons, CD Lamb, and Dak Prescott. Also in consideration, Zach Martin and DeMarcus Lawrence. I mean, what a loaded top of the roster for the Cowboys. Of course, the most interesting story here is all of these guys need to get paid. CD Lamb, Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott, they're all ready to get paid. So what is Dallas going to do with all of this star power going forward?
Yeah, I mean, Micah Parsons, obviously, he's their number one guy, the most talented player I think they have, one of the most talented players in the entire NFL. CeeDee Lamb, I think, definitely the number two guy, incredibly productive, gotten better all the way through his career, and is sort of right there on the precipice of those best receivers in the NFL. The third guy, I think, is where I think you can have questions and make an argument for somebody other than Dak Prescott. Dak, career year last year. Like by most statistical measures, Dak Prescott was MVP last season. Didn't end up winning it. MVP is as much narrative driven as anything else, and that's partly why it went to Lamar Jackson. Largely, in fact, why it went to Lamar Jackson. Dak Prescott's numbers in most areas were better, and he was the guy that, even statistically people would argue was MVP. But generally, Dak Prescott is in that, not top tier quarterbacks. He's not there with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. He's the next group down, right? Somewhere like in the Kirk Cousins realm. If he's there,
Ooh.
I mean, right?
People, I mean, if you were ranking quarterbacks right now, you'd still have Dak in a clear second tier and maybe Cousins as like the bottom of the second tier.
I mean, maybe, but he's in the
People
second
are going to
tier.
people might be upset by that statement, Sam.
I mean, they might be, but
people are going to clip Sam. It's going to be on DallasCowboysFansite.com. Very upset about this.
Dak Prescott is clearly in the second tier of NFL quarterbacks behind the elite tier. Is that not a reasonable statement to make?
That's a good statement, but the damage is done, Sam. The damage is done. The video has already been clipped, and you are on a deep Reddit thread that as an anti-Dak Cowboy hater.
Okay. My point being, if he's in that second tier, then you can immediately start to bring in a bunch of other players that, are in comparable tiers at different positions. So, Trayvon Diggs, I think, could be in that group as well at the cornerback position. Zach Martin is coming off, the worst season of his career? But
yeah, last two seasons he's been down just a little bit. But yeah, we're talking about a Hall of Fame trajectory for Zach Martin at guard.
And at 33, 34 years old, he's probably not getting better. He might have just reached the point where he is what he is now. But like before those years was basically 90 plus every single year playing at, the peak of his powers, was the best guard in the NFL. Even at the diminished version of him, like I think has at least an argument to be in this group if you can get, a slightly better version of him than last season. I think Brandon Cooks is kind of criminally underrated throughout his career. It would at least give him a shout in the conversation. That's probably it, though, right?
What about the two corners? You got Trayvon Diggs coming off of injury, Deron Bland coming off of all those interceptions. If we're talking just in the conversation, obviously we're not going to put them above CD Lamb. I wouldn't put him above DeMarcus Lawrence, who also is criminally underrated with how good he's been the last few years, maybe overshadowed a little bit by Micah Parsons. But Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs are probably in the conversation as a top three player on a lot of other teams, which again shows if you're talking just the top 8 to 10 players on a team, it'd be difficult to find any other teams, maybe the Niners, any other teams that have this level of depth at the very, very top of the roster.
Well, Bland and Diggs are both interesting because they're extreme examples of what we talked about before with A.J. Terrell, which is like just how extreme can the positive end of variance go for you, right? With A.J. Terrell, it just sort of put together not a routine, but like a typical high-level sort of all-pro caliber season when he was at his peak. With both Diggs and then Deron Bland last season, their extreme positive end of variance was like record setting, right? With Diggs, it was a crazy number of interceptions. With Deron Bland, it was a literal all-time top level of pick sixes. 9 interceptions total. 5 of them were pick sixes. Is that right? 5 or 6?
I think it was 5, yeah.
But like literally never happened before in the history of the game. So all-time record-setting level of pick sixes, which results in a PFF coverage grade of 86.4 and an overall grade of 89.5. Like truly elite season, but how much of that is driven by those pick sixes, which, it's not like he got lucky and fell into those. A lot of them were extremely high-level plays, but it screams, regression to the mean next season. And if that happens, and instead of 9 interceptions, 5 pick sixes, you get 4 interceptions, and maybe one of them is a pick six, like what does that result in as a grade?
I mean, part of the nature of all the cornerback stuff that we're talking about is that you can make extreme positive and extreme negative plays at corner, more so than maybe other positions, right? You don't have as many extreme negative plays as a receiver that are front and center. You might disappear and not get open and have games where you don't make catches, but you don't have games where it's like, man, you just had 4 bad plays as a receiver. That's rare, especially for good receivers. As a corner, you're trying to make big plays and not get beaten, right? So it's like it's 2 things, and sometimes you weigh one more than the other, and that's where people were giving Bland's, defensive player of the year. Oh, it has to be defensive player of the year. He's got all these pick sixes, and then he had games where he got torched, right? So that's the balance of playing corner. But overall, I mean, Dallas is thrilled with what they've gotten from DaRon Bland as a player, as a 5th-round pick. So that's, again, shows just how good they are at the top of the roster. I think for the Cowboys going forward, my question is, some of the depth that they've lost at other positions. But yeah, they're still loaded with star power.
Yep.